Welcome back into the National Rundown. This is episode 9, and we have, again, a wonderful week for you all. It was a pretty wild week in the CFL and in the CEBL, so there's going to be lots to go over and talk about. But as always, I'm your host, Brady Locke, joined alongside Geono Aloisio. And Geono, I'm going to send it to you first. How did you enjoy this week in the CFL in particular? I know your Elks are off to a 2-0 start. That's super exciting. What do you see there?
Yeah, well, I mean, outside of the weather, it's been pretty amazing, for the Edmonton Elks and Edmonton as a whole. Obviously the Stingers are not doing so well, so for Edmonton to have kind of a winner, I feel like it's definitely something that, the fans and the people of Edmonton have been waiting for a very long time. But obviously, the Elks are 2-0. They took down Davis Alexander and, got his unbeaten regular season record out. Funny enough, it was not Bo Levi, but it was the former Montreal Alouettes quarterback, Cody Fajardo, who got it done. But also Justin Rankin, man, that guy keeps impressing me every single week. But, there's so many things that we're going to get into. So, yeah, I could say the vibes are pretty high in Edmonton, but I feel like that might also be an understatement.
Yeah, it seems like, it could be a little back and forth. You got to think positive and look at the CFL and probably not the CEBL right now. But anyways, we'll start things off as we always do with our national pulse, putting our finger on the pulse, going coast to coast to really see what storylines are going on. So as always, we're going to start with you out in the West. I know you just touched on Edmonton, but what else is going on in the West right now?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest transformation has been the Winnipeg Sea Bears. They've come kind of out of nowhere. I know that may sound a little bit crazy now that they're probably, a top 2 team in the league, but man, they are 8-4 now. Like, they are 5-0 in their last 5. 4-1 in their last 5. They're 5-0 at home on this season. Like, this team just keeps getting better. Like, I just don't think people understand that, Xavier Moon has still not played. And as much as, Vancouver got Mitch Creek back, and how long he's going to stay with the team, we don't know. Like, Winnipeg really looks like the number 1 team in the league right now, especially, number 1 team in the West. I think Scarborough's probably still got the number 1 team in the league. But, man, that's been the biggest transformation. They've overtaken the Vancouver Bandits, who have, surprisingly started to stumble a little bit. I don't think many people realized that was probably going to be a possibility. They're 3-2 in their last 5. They're 8-4. They're right there with Winnipeg, but man, does it feel like the momentum has shifted in Winnipeg's favor. Winnipeg feels like the better team, even though the record says they're tied essentially.
Yeah.
I think that's just been such an interesting development. Tyrese Samuel was off for some NBA workouts. We talked a little bit about the Bandits and everything on the latest episode of the Canadian Fast Break, so make sure you go watch that. But obviously, that's been just tremendous, especially with the Mitch Creek thing. It's completely flipped the whole West on its head. And the other team that has not really been on any of our radars suddenly is on everybody's radars. The Saskatoon Mamba, they're 4-1 in their last 5, and now they are 6-5, and they just took down the Ottawa Blackjacks last night. Like, there's so many interesting things here where I don't know. There's so many things we can talk about with the Mamba. I definitely think we should talk about that more on the Canadian Fast Break. They're becoming one of the most interesting stories in the league. And then obviously Edmonton. 3-7, man. I don't know what's happening in Alberta. It's 3-7 for Edmonton and 1-11 for Calgary. Like, I don't know what to expect out of these guys. There's not a whole lot there. But obviously just some really shaky stuff in the CEBL. But I'll throw it back to you, Brady, to cover the East, and then we can go into the CFL.
Yeah, so honestly, the East has probably been, relatively exciting. Maybe not as exciting as some of the stuff going on in the West, but there was a huge win in the CFL starting there with the Ticats taking on the Lions, getting the huge win. Bo Levi, I mean, he had a great game. We're going to get into that very shortly, but man, I definitely am going to have to eat some of my words on Bo Levi. But moving on from there, the Argos, another win against the Red Blacks. I think, that was kind of a battle duking it out of maybe the worst team in the East so far. But Argos, honestly, looking a little bit of, like a threat offensively. There's definitely a lot to clean up, but the Argos looking pretty good. Red Blacks, as for them, there's a lot of questions that are going to have to be posed and a lot of reflection, I think, on their team through their first couple games. But then moving into the CEBL, Scarborough, like you mentioned, they are now 10-1, looking really good. They picked up 2 more guys, Jay Scrub and Cat Barber. So the rich, they're only getting richer, it seems, right? So we broke that down on the Canadian Fast Break. A very, very big signing there. For the 2 of those guys. But then looking at Brampton, they're on a bit of a decline in a little bit. I know Sean East didn't play one of those games, but they lost 4 straight now against Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and I believe Niagara. So yeah, they are now 7-5, and they're actually only 1 game up on the Montreal Alliance, who are then only 1 game up on the Niagara River Lions. So things are tightening up in the East for the CEBL. And I mean, you can kind of look at Ottawa too, but they've dropped, I think, now 5 straight and have fallen to 4-8 on the season. So,
yeah,
Ottawa not looking great, especially if you're looking at their CBL and CFL. There's some, pretty poor times in Ottawa right now. Hopefully they can find their stride, but I think that's pretty much going to cover everything big going on in the East right now. But let's start things off in the CFL. I do want to go right back to that Hamilton game. Bo Levi, man, let's start there. He was tremendous. I have to give him his props, right? He threw more touchdowns than incompletions in that game. That is something that, for me as a football guy looking on it, I love efficiency. I love quarterbacks who can, throw with confidence, but also make the right throws, know when to not throw. And Bo Levi, he just had his decision-making on point that game. But it was really the deep ball that was killing BC, it felt. They had so many deep shots to Lawler, Smith. Everybody was chipping in. It was a tremendous game from Hamilton. I'm going to send it to you. I know you've been a huge Bo Levi believer. So, what did you think of him in that game?
Honestly, there was not a whole lot to be disappointed about. I know I talked a lot about when we were talking about why I like Bo Levi. It's the experience. Everybody will probably point out the age. And I would made it very clear, this is not the Bo Levi of the mid 2010s. I'm fully aware of that. He's in a different stage of his career now, but he's been so experienced. He knows every single thing in the CFL there is to pretty much know. He's seen it all. That's very rare in a league like this to see, a guy have this much, longevity. And there's only a select few people that really stick around this long. It kind of puts you up there with the greats. And the greats in every single part of this league have always kind of dominated until they decided to hang it up. So when I saw that, it's I was not exactly as surprised as probably you were about how, good he's been this season. But, we were on recording, this little bit of a segment for the National Rundown that we did earlier in the week that we're going to get to, and I was really shocked. I was looking at the numbers and I'm like, how is Hamilton just crushing BC right now? I didn't really think so. You look at it, 5 touchdowns, but 285 passing yards. That doesn't really link up with you, and it doesn't really become relevant to say, okay, this is what happened. This is a dominant game. You look at Chad Kelly, he threw for 400 yards and he got 4 touchdowns. For Bo Levi to have 5 on 285, that is just unbelievable. I don't know how you could really that's almost I don't want to say impossible, but that's really, really a statistical anomaly. The amount of games you can play and have this stat line, very, very rare in my opinion. I don't know how many more 5 touchdown games you're going to get in the next 2-3 years when a guy doesn't throw 300 more passing yards. That was really the thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially to look at those numbers, right? He only, threw 18 balls, completed 15 of them, right? 285 yards. But again, like I said, it was really the deep shots, right? He had a longest throw to Lawler, which was 49, longest to Keandre Smith, which was 56, longest to Myron Mitchell, which was also 56. So those 3 right there are making up 150 of those 285 yards on 3 of those balls. Bo Levi's average on that game was 15 yards a throw, which, looking at it compared to Rourke, was only 8 yards a throw. So I think that kind of in itself is just showing, he knew when to throw the ball deep, and he knew that he was going to complete it. And like you said, I think going back, it's just the experience, right? He's been in the league so long. He's been in those situations before where maybe it hasn't gone his way, and he's learned from it. So I think all quarterbacks can kind of take away from that, you just got to keep playing more in this league. And although it's
I
a
agree.
pretty quick to, like, you only have certain moments to show your stuff, I think you just got to stay the course. But it's tough, especially, when you might not get all those opportunities. But when you do, you just got to take advantage. And, Bo Levi, he has definitely done that throughout his career. But
Yeah.
I do want to touch on BC a little bit later on, so I think we'll leave it there for now. I want to go into the other game that I talked about, which was Toronto, Ottawa. Chad Kelly, I mean, he had a 4-4 performance, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 400 yards, man. That is a stat line you definitely don't see that often. 2 of those interceptions at the end kind of felt like gifts. I know he was probably feeling really good. His team was up 2 scores. Confidence was pretty high, which certainly isn't a bad thing to have your confidence high, but it just kind of felt a little bit of sloppy towards the end. But he showed some really good throws, really big moments. But Toronto, getting the win over this Ottawa team. I'll start with you going into Toronto, and then we'll go into Ottawa. But starting with Toronto, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching that game, and immediately you could kind of feel like this game was going to go Toronto's way. I think I said that on the north of the end zone. Like, there was no way in my mind that Ottawa was going to come away with this because, again, we feel like there's a ceiling to Jake Maier's game. I think this is starting to prove it, even if Ottawa might not just be a good team, and I think we're starting to immediately tell that. I don't think we need to wait until week 21 to know that, the Ottawa Redblacks are not going to be a good football team. This is just the early signs. There's not a whole lot, and I know we're going to get to that, but, Toronto just really looks like they're starting to be maybe a little bit better than what I expected, a little bit better than what I think a lot of people expected them to be, because I think, I probably was expecting the West to cross over, but I do have to say I think that might be on hold for right now. I think that there is a conversation that the Toronto Argonauts are probably going to make the playoffs. I think that it's still too early to tell when it comes to that part, as much as, Ottawa, we can kind of almost stake a claim in it. I think, the Argos at their full potential right now. Like, they're starting to look like a team that could probably come together and do something. Until we start to see them play more West opponents, I would be a little bit more on that's what I'm waiting for statement-wise. But right now, they almost took Montreal to the brink, and I look at what they did against Ottawa. I'd like to see them play against a more even strength opponent. Find somewhere in the middle, so let's see where you're really at, and we can kind of go from there. But I think that this was definitely an interesting game that might fly under the radar because people see a blowout against Ottawa. I see that it's the Argos starting to find their identity. And, Chad Kelly, I have it up on my screen right now, threw for 23 touchdowns and 4,000 passing yards in 2023, the last time he played a full season. This guy already looks like he's probably going to eclipse that in 10 games at this pace. That would it's probably not going to happen in 10 games. But again, just having that great of a start, 869 passing yards in 2 games. I don't know how you can ask much more from your quarterback, a guy that, had a leg injury and now he's back. To me, this is starting to really ramp up and feel like a good campaign in the works for the Argos.
Yeah, I know certainly our compatriot Owen Reed is going to be very happy about this performance, and he's going to have a lot to say probably on Wednesday. But yeah, taking a look now at Ottawa, Jake Maier, like we said, kind of going into this game, this felt like one where he had to have a good performance, where he had to show out in order to kind of, solidify his spot as quarterback for now.
Yeah.
Now you're going into 2 very difficult games after this, and it feels like it's just not going to get any better from here. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens, whether they make a change going into these games. Drew Brown might come in, who knows? But for now, looking at this game, he just made some really poor decision-making. And to go back to what I said about Bo Levi, he was making terrific game decisions, and Jake Maier was the complete opposite. He made, like, his 2 interceptions, the throws were just not necessary, I felt. Like, he could throw it away. He could have done anything else, but he just kind of threw it there. Like, you just got to be better than that. You got to, be smarter as a quarterback. You're the guy who's making the main decisions, and to do that, it's just putting your team in a bad position. But
yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's a lot of weird things that are happening in Ottawa right now, especially, like, with Maier, like you just said, like, I don't know. I think that there's the time is running out. I think that there might be, a conversation about a quarterback change. But honestly, these are not the conversations you want to be having going into a week 4 of a season. Like, I know it's 21 weeks of a season, but week 4 already talking about, is it time for the quarterback to be out of there? I don't know. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things Ottawa needs to straighten out to get back on track.
Yeah, I think the one bright spot I saw, Aiden Eberhardt, he had a pretty good game. He was bailing out Jake Mayer quite a bit on some of those throws, making some good catches. He had 129 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown catch was pretty nice, but other than that, I wasn't seeing too much bright spots. I liked Ottawa's defense maybe a little bit at the like on some of those plays, but you gave up 44 points. Like there's not much you can really say great about them. I mean, 4 interceptions, cool, but it kind of felt like some of those were gifts anyways. So
I agree.
Yeah, Ottawa, not a lot to take there, but we will move on from them for now. There's going to be conversations we're going to have definitely in future episodes. But for now, we're going to go over to a bit more of an exciting note, especially for you. Those Edmonton Elks, 2-0, like we said. Break this game down for me, really. I'm going to let you take the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stat lines, and dude, this does not look like a game Edmonton should have won. Your quarterback throws for 231 yards and one passing touchdown. You win the game 32-29 in overtime. To be honest with you, like I know, Cody ran it in for the last one, but man, this really showed the Justin Rankin, experience, what everybody should be expecting out of this guy for the rest of the season, and that he's putting the league on watch right now. You do not want to mess around when you play with the Edmonton Elks right now. That is not something you've been able to say in the past few years. As a matter of fact, the last time the Elks were 2-0, I was in grade 9. So just to put, some timestamps on that, it's a very, very long time. I've been through a lot of years of, not seeing my football team be, in this record position. So to me, to be honest with you, this is what's really lifting up the spirits of Edmonton right now. You look at this game, again, I think Justin Rankin is probably the most likable player on this team. Not because everybody else isn't likable, but because this guy just works so hard and, he performs well. I think Edmonton likes guys that come out and give their best every night. And he's been doing that consistently ever since really he popped onto the scene last year. The guy's just really been making his own mark, and I think a lot of people have respect for that. So, looking at this game, like every single bit of it says this team should not win. Austin Mack was something I was really, really excited to see how he fits into the Edmonton offense. I mean, the guy got 48 yards, right? He got targeted 8 times, made a reception for 4 of them. Now, mind you, this was also a game played in the rain. Edmonton's going through a torrential rain period. The Vancouver weather has migrated here for the World Cup. So, there's definitely some weather effects in Edmonton right now. But, thinking about that, like, Rankin was also the number 1 receiver for this team. And I look at it, I'm like, okay, I think that's an interesting thing. Yeah. It's just crazy, right? I don't know if this is sustainable. That's my one thing. Is Justin Rankin just that much of a game breaker? Very, very possible. But at the same time, you win by 3 points. I do think that this is you can't continue to rely on him every single game to be, going at it 100%, because there might be times where he might not be at 100%. And I think the Elks have to be okay with that, and they have to use, find ways to get the other parts of the offense going. But right now, the fact is you're 2-0. You got to take that and hope that kind of gets you to that other spot, because it'd be better than being at an 0-2 spot and Rankin still doing his thing. And you got to find a way to get the offense together. I think there's a really good opportunity for Edmonton to play against, Winnipeg, see where they're kind of at. Again, this is we talk a lot about figuring out where the East and the West are. Just as Toronto kind of needs that middle strength game, I think this is a game that Edmonton needs to look at to say, hey, if we win this, we kind of figure out not exactly how big that Montreal win was, but also where we kind of fit up in the West right now, because there's a lot of real potential here to really come together and actually make, a push early in the season while you have Calgary and BC at 0-2. Like, this Winnipeg game could not be, you can't undersell this game. It is absolutely you pretty much got to win this one if you're Edmonton and you want to kind of seal the stake that you're back and this is for real. You got to win that game, and I'll be excited to see how they kind of come out. I guess it's on Thursday, so it's a quick one, but we're not gonna have to wait long to see what we think of Edmonton's performance.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, there's a lot to like from Edmonton, and looking at this, I don't think Fajardo's stat line really showed how big of an impact he did have on this game.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, looking at that, his interception really shouldn't have been. Well, it really wasn't his fault. Like, it was kind of just hanging there. It got caught up on the leg. Like, it didn't touch the ground. The guy just kind of picked it up, right? So, For me, I don't think he deserved an interception. And then that one, I don't know if it really would have impacted too much, but he laid a really nice block down for Rankin on that touchdown. I don't know if the guy would have caught Rankin, but it definitely was showing me that he's willing to put his body on the line for this team. And for me, I'd love to see that from a quarterback and not just sit back, kind of like let your players do their thing. But
yeah, well, that's exactly it. Like, sorry to cut you off there, but like the Elks have, like, Edmonton has had such a problem where it feels like sometimes just, I'm not calling people out, but it sometimes feels like players just straight up didn't care.
Yeah.
I think, I talk about it. Edmonton just loves hardworking people. Rankin is exactly that. I'll never forget after the Labor Day Classic last year, the Elks posted a clip and he's like, just be ready to show up for work on Wednesday because it was a Monday game. And I'm like, how could you not like that guy? One, but just talking about, like, those are the kinds of people that win you football games and they win you championships. And that's why I was so excited when Cody Fajardo was here and I understood, okay, this is a guy that's going to bring you consistency, but he has that championship DNA. He knows how to put his body on the line. And I think that's what builds a team together. When your guy is willing to put his body on the line, even though I know Mark Killam's probably like, dude, you can't get injured. I think it gives a lot of, ambition to the team to say, hey, like, it bonds you together to feel like, hey, I'm willing to put my body on the line just the same way my teammate is. And that's the one thing that I've noted from Edmonton this year that's been a lot different. It feels like a team. They feel like they have confidence and it feels like they're building a culture, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, and I mean, Fajardo, you could see how badly he wanted to win this game, especially against Montreal. Yeah. And for him to take that handoff option at the end to win the game, that's just beautiful and heartwarming for him, right? He wanted that moment so much and he took it. So, and it was a really great fake too. Like, it definitely fooled them all, and it was pretty easy walk-in, right? So, great from the Elks. Rankin, obviously, you said it all. Like, he's just such a valuable piece to this team, and they're going to have to find, I think, some more offense outside of him, because I think teams will definitely catch on and try to, stop that a little bit. But with that being said, he's very hard to stop. So we're going to have to see somebody do it. But then, looking at Montreal, Davis Alexander, obviously my guy, he still had a pretty great game, I think. Yeah. A lot of this was definitely just a really tough situation in the weather. A lot of turnovers in this game, and it felt like Montreal, if they would have cleaned it up, especially at the end, like that muffed punt, there was another fumble in there. Like, there was just a couple things that if they cleaned that up, I think they would have had this game. So
I agree.
I think, Philpott looked great again. Sneed, he had that one fumble at the end, but that was just tough. Like, there was three guys on him ripping it out. He's still got to hang on to that, of course, but it's wet, it's tough, So Montreal now 2-1. Hamilton now 2-1, so that's kind of interesting that they're back level. Very interesting. So a lot to this was a pretty big standings week, and I know we looked at that going into this week, that we thought, hey, maybe if Montreal loses, Edmonton wins, 2-1, 2-1, and then the other side you got 2-0, 2-0. Like, there's a lot of things there that are very interesting, because now it's Elks Riders at the top, and then you have Stamps Lions that are kind of, have that shaky start. We got a lot to look forward to, especially with those Stamps, but we'll move on to their game against the Rough Riders. This was a very interesting one. Obviously, this one went to overtime as well, but the Stampeders, they weren't actually in this game for majority of it.
90% of it. Yeah. It felt like 90%.
The Riders didn't put them away. They allowed them to keep hanging around, and, Vernon Adams, he was pretty solid, but again, he didn't get things going until the end. Just that one touchdown pass in that final drive, he's got to have a better start to his game, personally, I think.
I agree.
And, Trevor Harris, once again, fantastic on that side of the ball. AJ Ouellette, 84 yards, but then, Schaefer Baker, man, he had another fantastic game, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. And you could see in the post-game interview, like, his confidence is just oozing. Trevor Harris, he said so many things about him that, he didn't get much time with him, in the previous season, and then only a little bit in 24. But going into camp, he was really, confident in his ability to play with Schaefer Baker, and they have just been balling out so far. He loves the guy. And Emulus, Keyshawn Johnson, he loves all three. They have a great trio, and they're so confident in each other. It's just gelling in Saskatchewan right now. So I'll send it to you. What do you think, both sides, Saskatchewan, Calgary? What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I want to point out that Keon Schaefer-Baker, I don't remember which touchdown it was, but he hit the beat it celebration, and I just lost it. I was like, A, that was so funny, and he did a great job about it, too. I don't think many people expected that, but you can tell he was working on it. I mean, he found the end zone twice, that night, so definitely, he deserved it. But, the other interesting part, I think I talked to you guys a little bit about this, about Tommy Stevens. He's the best short yardage QB in the league. I'll put my hat on that. I think everybody can agree there. He got into the end zone twice, and he loved that little corner in that bottom right. Where that scoreboard was in McMahon. I was like, he just loved that corner. I think he ended up both times there. Yeah. And there were some Saskatchewan fans there, so I'm sure that was probably a little bit of his motivation. But definitely just all around, Saskatchewan just keeps looking like the best team around right now. I'm a big fan of a complete team, a team that you can stake your hat in and say, yeah, these guys have everything. KSB, MLS, and Keyshawn Johnson, I don't know if you can name a better top 3 wide receiver core in the CFL.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about that before. AJ Ouellette, I don't know what you thought about him. He's not really that explosive back. I told you, he's that guy that picks up 4 to 5 yards on a play and gets you to the second down and maybe finishes across. And it's just, you look at this team and you're starting to struggle to find ways of, okay, how are you going to beat them? And, how is this team not going to be one of the best teams in the CFL this year? Because they just continue to impress me everywhere they go. Jameer Thurman, I mean, you got to love the guy. Again, he really commands the Saskatchewan defense. Marcus Sales, again, the same thing. Jackson Ford, this team is so deep. And that's without even getting into the guys like, Tavon Campbell that you just look at and you're like, how are these guys not in the NFL, right? There's so many people here, especially on Saskatchewan. It feels like we're heading back to that 2007 to 2013 stretch of the CFL. And that was mostly, Montreal and the Riders were up there. And it really feels, mimicked to exactly that. And it's funny enough because, Brady, I'll drop some CFL lore on you. Obviously, the 2009 and 2010 Grey Cups were between Saskatchewan and Montreal. Montreal came away with both of those. And those 2009 was a really, really good Grey Cup. You should watch that one. Saskatchewan fans do not like being taught about that one because the 13th man on the final field goal. So either way, we'll leave that for another episode. We'll teach Brady all about the CFL lore. But, talking about it, this just feels like a team that you look at them and I'm like, okay, you got to give them their props. I told you I was really shaky about, Saskatchewan. I'm like, I want to see what they got. And to be honest with you right now, they're proving to every bit of the expectation and more right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not, like you said, there's not a spot on their team where I'm, worried about. I think there's maybe some questions still about Ouellette, but he's doing his job, right? He's getting those 4 or 5 yards per carry. And then even Thomas Bertrand, he's getting his 4 or 5 yards per carry. They're doing their job, and that's all you can ask right now. So, with that trio at wide receiver, you're going to have your offense on any given night. One of them's always going to be stepping up for sure. So
I agree.
Yeah, Saskatchewan looking good. Calgary, I think, like we said, I think this game this week is going to be huge for them and BC. Whoever loses that game is going to have some serious heads turned towards them. And they're going to have serious questions on their backs. So
I don't know if I had BC and Calgary going 0-2. I know I talked about it last episode, and I'll take my victory lap here for a second. I think I predicted it exactly when I was talking about the 2-0 for the Elks, 0-2 for the Lions. I did not expect that to happen, but I'll take my victory lap. I put it out there. I don't think anybody really expected either team to be in that situation right now. And to be honest with you, just imagining BC or Calgary being at 0-3 really just kind of gives you a little bit of concern. I know, especially if you're a Calgary fan, you don't want the surge thing to happen again with the Stamps.
Yeah. Oh man.
So that would be pretty awful. I don't think the Stamps will go on an 0-10 run, but you never know in the CFL. I think there's a lot riding on this game right now, and I feel like that's the thing people are probably going to point out. A lot of people might think about also Toronto, Saskatchewan. I think that could kind of be a more sneaky game, but I think that this one's definitely the number one game of the week. It's the Lions and the Stamps because to be honest with you, I think this is kind of a decision game. I think there's a lot to you look at it to be okay. What happens after this game? Do you start changing things up, or do you kind of start to keep going with it? I don't know, because to be honest with you, that's the thing about football. You never know. Certain teams can come out and surprise you each week. That's the CFL for you. Honestly, I don't feel like Calgary's that far off. They really came back in the second half. They were getting blown out in the first half. Saskatchewan dropped 20 points in the second. that's enough to win you a football game almost most nights. They probably could have stopped playing there, and if most nights they probably would have won. But I feel like that's a little bit of the interesting part. I think that the Calgary defense might be the weak part of this team right now, but it's just too early to tell. 2 weeks in, I'm not going to go out and say they need to blow it up, but definitely a little bit of a shock and a little bit surprising stuff. How they kind of rebound from there, nobody knows. But this game in week 4, who would have thought it would be this pivotal for both teams?
That is all for our free version of the National Rundown. If you enjoyed that, go subscribe to our Insiders portion. For only $2.99 a month, you can get our debates, news, headlines, and more. So make sure you go do that ASAP, and we will see you in the next one.